Start by threading the top of your machine. Spool on the spool pin, cap on, thread guide number 1, number 2, 3, 4, 5, hook number 6, hook number 7, and thread the needle. Due to the angle of my video, I had to use my left hand to thread the needle, so it does take an extra second. You should be using your dominant hand though, and you should be able to do it much quicker. Once the top of your machine is threaded, it's time to put in the bobbin. The thread should be going up and over to the left. Drop it in, hook it under the front hook. Hold your top thread, spin your hand wheel 1 full turn, and grab the loop of your bottom thread. Push them to the back of your machine. Put the cover back on your bobbin case. Then you're ready to sew, starting on side 1. You can line up your fabric on the 5/8 inch seam allowance and the edge of your fabric just to the back of your presser foot so you can see it through the hole. Read your instructions for stitch number 1 and adjust your settings accordingly. Go ahead and stitch forward 3 stitches, back stitch, and then forward again all the way to the edge of your fabric. At the end, you will slow down, hold down your reverse feed button 3 stitches, and then stitch to the end again. Lift up your presser foot, make sure your needle is at the top, and you can clip the threads using the hook at the edge of your machine. Now it says to unthread and rethread using 2 new colors. Readjust your settings to match the ones required for stitch number 2. Spool on the spool pin and the cap on. Thread guides number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hook number 6, hook number 7, and thread your needle. Make sure that your thread is going straight from 6, 7, all the way through the needle and not looped around. Put in your bobbin, thread going up and over to the left. Drop it in, hook it, hold your top thread, spin your hand wheel 1 full turn to grab that loop of the bottom thread. Push them down through the presser foot into the back. Cover your bobbin case. Ready to stitch side number 2. Line it up at the 5/8 inch seam allowance, beginning of your fabric showing just through that hole in the presser foot. Forward 3, reverse 3, and forward, all the way to the end of your stitch. At the end of your fabric, before you go off the edge, hold down the reverse 3 stitches and forward back to the edge. Make sure your presser needle is all the way up and your presser foot is up before pulling your fabric, and you can cut those threads with the razor on the side of your machine again. And there's stitch number 2. The tension was a little snug on this machine, so I did adjust it here. That's not something you should need to do. Unthread your machine. Rethread your machine, spool on the spool pin, hook number 1, hook number 2, 3, 4, 5 at the top, 6, hook at the bottom, 7, hook, and 8 through the needle. bobbin in the bobbin case, thread going up and over to the left, hook it into the hook, hold your top thread, spin your hand wheel one full turn, and grab that loop of thread from the bobbin. Hook them down between the presser foot and to the back of your machine. Bobbin case cover on, and you're ready to stitch number 3. Notice I put my presser foot down, but leave the needle up before I adjust my settings. Forward 3, back stitch, so all the way across, making sure to stay at your 5/8 inch seam allowance, get to the edge, back stitch, and forward to the edge again. Take up lever to the top, cut your threads. And that's stitch number 3. Yours may look a little different because you can choose whichever pattern you would like. And unthread and rethread the machine for the last time. Putting a new bobbin in, thread up and over to the left under the hook. And once I thread my needle, I'm going to hold my top thread, spin the hand wheel one full rotation, and then grab my loop from the bottom of the machine. Once I grab that loop, I have 2 threads, down and back. Cover up your bobbin case. When you're stitching side number 4, you're going to practice a pivot. The steps of the pivot include stopping where you're going to turn, making sure that your needle is down in the fabric, lifting your presser foot, turning your fabric, presser foot back down, and then continue to sew. So here I'm going forward, back stitch, and forward again. I'm going to stop just before the center. Notice I am following my 5/8 inch seam allowance. My needle is down, presser foot up, turn your fabric, lower your presser foot, and sew. Stop, make sure your needle goes down into the fabric, presser foot up, turn your fabric, presser foot down, and sew. Stopping again for the 3rd turn, making sure my needle's down, presser foot up, turn my fabric, presser foot down, and sew. I need to stop so that I have a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Again, when I turn, needle down, presser foot up, presser foot down, making sure I check that my seam allowance is right, and then sew to the end. Get to the end, hold down the reverse feed, back stitch 3 and forward 3 to the edge. Needle up, presser foot up, cut your threads. At this point, you would shut off your machine, unthread it for the final time, putting the bobbins back where they belong in the storage container on your machine or your neighbor's machine, returning the spool fully wrapped up to the shelf on the wall. Make sure your spool pin cap is on. Bobbin case is covered, and you wrap up your foot control. Put your red fabric under your presser foot. Before you can turn in your finished fabric, you need to make sure that you get rid of all of these crazy threads. Go ahead and clip them off. Finally, you will pin your fabric using 2 pins to the place on the worksheet Make sure that your name and your period are on your fabric as well as on your paper, and then you may turn it in directly to Miss Seveny.